This is a long overdue video about this guy named Ollie London, a transracial guy, who many people are saying, how people say about things like this, like it's weird, that someone would try to do something like this. To me, my perception on this whole situation is like, well, there is such a thing as transracial. People love to act like transracial doesn't exist, but it literally does exist for people who are, it's not really transracial, honestly, it's more like transcultural. I don't really think people are transracial because, like, it's really your biological race, right? And then plus, anyway, when you think of race, it's kind of weird to me because we talk about like, oh, you can't be transracial, but heck, most people have the other races in them. You know what I mean? Like, if people take DNA tests, usually you get a little bit Asians, some Africans, Middle Eastern, some Europeans, some Native American. You get all those things in there, usually. At small, varying levels. Some people get it at very small levels, some people get it at higher levels. But we all have it in us. Like, most people aren't monoracial. So it's kind of like, to me, weird, that people act like that there's such a thing as, like, that there's such a thing as being transracial. You know what I mean? When technically people have all those races in them anyway. You know what I mean? So it's like most people at least have all those races in them to small levels. To me, I think that's why sometimes when people say such a thing as transracial, when they're referencing transracial, I'm like, half the time you're probably not even referencing it right because to transition to something, you have to not be it at all. This is why with transgender people, you can't have people who are intersex. Like gender dysphoria or gender identity disorder, if you have an intersex condition, it usually basically made you unable to have gender identity disorder. So, I mean, it kind of goes to the same thing here in the sense of, you can't transition to something that you already are, kind of thing. And, like I said, we all have a little something else in us. So it's kind of weird to me when people say that. Now, to me, I don't get why people have such a big issue with this, to be completely honest. People freak out about things like this, and to me, I'm like, when you freak out about this, to me it means, oh, you have some racist tendencies. The reason I say a person has racist tendencies is they have an issue with what someone else does on a racial sense. Like, when someone does something different on a gender difference, genders are very different from each other. Male to female are very different. They they have different bodily functions, basically. Obviously, a male and a female are very different from each other. Races aren't really different from each other. Even none of the races are different from each other, okay? Like, even when I talk about the things I talk about in other videos, you can still see that even despite defining that difference that I make in those videos, um, there's still not much of a difference. It's just a color difference. It's just a hair difference. It's just an eye difference. In this guy's case, it's an eye difference and maybe a hair color difference. Different facial features he wants to have done to his face. I'm sorry, they want to have done to their face. I'm sorry, I forgot. It's a non-binary person. But, like, to me, I just don't understand why, people want to act like it's such a big offense. You know, like they act like they try to get people of other, like people who are Asian or people who are black. You know, in the case of the Dolezal situation, Dolezal's different though because she was taking somebody's an opportunity from a black person, which I understand that. But you get what I'm saying. You know, I just don't get like why they always try and get the people of the specific race to be um, aggravated by it. And I think they do that because they feel uncomfortable, you know, about the races being crossed over like that. Because the more you cross over like that, the less distinction race has. And, you know, people who like to have the distinction in race in order to kind of keep a hierarchy in some cases, in order to, you know, feel proud about whatever race you are, and things of that nature, you know, because that's the only reason race is important to people is because usually they think one is better than the other, and that can go any way for that matter. That's the only reason people have outrage. But the thing is, people make this outrage to be something else because they know they can't say, I am upset because somebody is trying to be another race because of how I feel about race and how important race is really to me, you know. And to me, I just like, from my perspective, it's just like race doesn't matter that much to me. Um, I do think like when people like bleach their skin, for example, to look differently or look a different race or something. To me, one anyway, I don't think anyone, excuse me, honestly bleaches their skin to look a different race because um, if you're black, your skin isn't what makes you look another race; it's your face. So I mean, the bleach wouldn't have anything to do with that. But it's kind of like, you know, when people bleach their skin, it's a health problem, you see. But when people just are changing their eye shape, getting a fake tan, or dyeing their hair black, that's all just, you know, things they choose to do. Even bleaching is things people choose to do with their own body, and that's their choice. But at the same time, it does make people look really badly because you bleached and you're basically risking your life, and you're probably not going to be with us long. All because you wanted to look like a different race. Now that is the problem, the house side of it to me in that case. But in other cases where people are just trying to look like this or look like that, to me, I don't care about those kind of things. And I don't think it's that big of a deal. I don't think it's that offensive or anything. And honestly, people who make the argument of um, being a black person stuck inside a white person's body, or an Asian person stuck in a white person's body, and a black person stuck in an Asian person's body, or whatever. You know, to me, I don't have any issue with them saying that, really, honestly, because to me, it's like, what is a black person? In my mind, that's how I see it. What is a black person? What is an Asian person? What is a white person? I don't think there is a specific white, Asian, or black person. So if you want to say that you're a black person, well, how am I to say a black person is really any different from an Asian person or a white person? Or a white person different from an Asian person or a black person? I don't see them as different people. You know what I mean? I see them as different colors, but they're not different people. So they, to me, you know, are just physically, you know, racially different, but as people, they're not different. So to me, it's like if somebody was to um, try to say they're transracial, how am I to say they're not? Because to me, from my perspective, it's like no race is different from another race. This is the whole reason we have equality. If we thought that races were different from each other, then we wouldn't have equality, and we'd be right back to white supremacy or Asian supremacy. They may have actually proven that they are actually better than white people at this point. Who knows? Statistically, I'm speaking. So I mean, I just think, like, in reality, we know that everyone's equal to everybody. So then why would anyone have an issue with what race someone is trying to look like or trying to basically be perceived by people as? To me, that's just my perspective. I don't see anything where this person, Ali London, is offensive or anything, or like, oh, he can't be, or they can't be transracial or trans Korean. I mean, whatever, trans Korean, what is different between an Asian and a white person? They're just different colors. They're just different facial features, but they are not different people. So he can be any race he wants to be, in my opinion. Biologically speaking, of course not. I mean, we could do a DNA test on him and he's still going to be white. But saying that he can't be transracial, I mean, to me, I think he can be if he wants to be, or whatever he wants to be. That's fine. Um, but I just think that I think it's weird with the transgender community because they act like, oh my god, race is so much different. And I think, like, if you're of the mindset that race is so different, you must be so racist, honestly. Because if you think that black people are different from white people or Asian people are different from white people, then you're back to the mentality that made us disenfranchised by thinking of us as not the same, just a different color, but actually thinking of us as different people. Because deep down, people, you still think of the racial hierarchy, and you still think of the racial generalizations of black and Asian and Hispanic people. So you are deeply racist, in my opinion. And that's just how I feel on transgender people who claim, oh, this cannot be, but we can be, because man and woman are more similar, even though they are so physically different than someone who is just of another color, because it's obvious that a black man and a white man are not different and how they look, they're just a different color. So, where would this big difference be? If we all know that the white woman and the black woman are the same, just a different color, then where is the difference? The difference is in the person. That's what they're implying. The difference is in the person's mind, and how that person acts, and how that person feels, and how that person reacts to different situations. They are saying that that person is defined by their color, and their color makes them act a certain way, which is completely racism. Completely racism. And a lot of racism is bred in the LGBT community, honestly. And it's been long, you know, basically perpetuated in that community, honestly. Like, you can talk about how you want to live your life the way you want to live your life. And nobody has a right to tell you not to live that way. But what you go wrong in is trying to compare yourself to other people of other races. And you guys do it over and over and over again because you see people who are of other races, black people specifically, as something wrong with them. Because you were raised in racist households. So, I mean, I'm just saying, just speaking on the LGBT community, and the transgender community too. I'm not trying to say lesbians and gays and transgender people are the same. I'm saying that specifically in that community, they've dogged out on black people for a long damn time, and trying to define people as their race defines them as a person and makes them so different, much more than a man and a woman are, to me implies that you have some racist idea, and I do not appreciate that. So that's all I have to say on that. I know a lot of people might find this a little weird that I perceive it that way, but this is just my perspective on it. Honestly, like I said, I don't bother what other people do in their lives. I have a very libertarian lifestyle mindset. I think transgender people to go do what you do, Ollie London, do what you do, and yeah, that's that. I'll even say the people who are trying to kill themselves with bleach, do what you do. But seriously, you really should not think it's that important to kill yourself over this. But hey, whatever. It's your life too. But like me, I've spoken enough on that and how I don't agree with it. Nobody does. But my perspective on, like I said, with other situations where people are just getting plastic surgery, for all I care, I really don't. Dyeing your hair, tanning yourself, or getting plastic surgery really is none of my business at that point. You do what you do with your body, and nobody has a right to be saying that you can't do that with your body because it's your damn body. So, fuck off.